The pulsing neon lights of the cyberpunk metropolis cast an eerie glow over the bustling streets. A sleek silver spacecraft descended from the smog-choked sky. Inside the cramped cockpit, Zachary gripped the controls tightly, his emerald eyes fixed on the chaotic cityscape below. The towering skyscrapers adorned with holographic billboards and pulsing with a lifeblood of technology were a far cry from the tranquil forest of his homeworld. As the ship touched down on a deserted landing pad, Zachary took a deep breath, steeling himself for the unknown challenges that lay ahead. He was a Chalar, a proud warrior race known for their honor and bravery. But here in this strange new world, he was just another alien lost in a sea of humanity. The hatch hissed open and Zachary stepped out, his muscular frame encased in a form-fitting black bodysuit. His skin was a rich shade of blue, his hairless head adorned with intricate patterns of fluorescent inserts that glowed softly in the neon light. At his hip hung a sleek energy pistol, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows of this neon-lit jungle. As he made his way through the winding streets, Zachary couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale and complexity of the human city. Everywhere he looked, there were signs of advanced technology. Hovering vehicles, holographic interfaces, and augmented reality overlays that turned the mundane into the extraordinary. It was a world that seemed to pulse with an electric energy, a constant hum of activity that never ceased. But beneath the glittering facade, Zachary could sense a darker undercurrent. The streets were filled with desperate souls, their eyes hollow and their bodies augmented with cheap cybernetics. Gangs roamed the alleyways, their faces obscured by neon-lit masks, and their hands clutching black market weapons. This was a city where the strong preyed on the weak, where the line between man and machine had long since blurred. As Zachary turned a corner, he found himself face to face with a group of 4 thugs. They were a motley crew, their bodies adorned with garish tattoos and cheap cybernetics. The leader, a hulking brute with a shaved head and a cybernetic arm, stepped forward with a sneer. Well, what do we have here?" he drawled, his voice dripping with menace. A little lost alien all alone in the big city. Zachary's hand twitched toward his energy pistol, but he forced himself to remain calm. He had faced far worse threats than a few street thugs. "I mean you no harm," he said, his voice steady. "I am simply passing through." The leader let out a harsh bark of laughter. "Passing through, huh? Well, I'm afraid there's a toll for that. Hand over your credits, alien, and maybe we'll let you live." Zachary's eyes narrowed. He had no intention of giving in to these lowlifes, but before he could make a move, a voice rang out from the shadows. "Leave him alone!" The thugs whirled around, their weapons at the ready, but they were too slow. A blur of motion erupted from the darkness, and suddenly the leader was on the ground, clutching his bleeding nose. Standing over him was a young human woman, her fist clenched and her eyes blazing with fury. She was a striking figure with short, cropped black hair and a lean, athletic build. She wore a tight-fitting black bodysuit similar to Zachary's, but with neon blue accents that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. At her waist hung a pair of sleek high-tech pistols, and Zachary could see the telltale glint of cybernetic implants in her eyes. "You picked the wrong guy to mess with," she snarled, her voice dripping with contempt. "Now get lost before I really hurt you." The thugs hesitated for a moment, their eyes darting between the woman and Zachary, but then with a muttered curse, they turned and fled into the shadows, leaving their leader groaning on the ground. The woman turned to Zachary, her expression softening slightly. "You okay?" she asked, her voice still wary but not hostile. Zachary nodded, impressed by her skill and bravery. "I am unharmed, thanks to you. I am Zachary of the Cellari." The woman's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "A Chalar? Damn, you're a long way from home." "I'm Raven Blackwood." She held out her hand, and Zachary took it, feeling the strength in her grip. "It is an honor to meet you, Raven Blackwood. I am in your debt." Raven shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Don't mention it. I hate seeing guys like that picking on people, even if they are aliens." Zachary couldn't help but chuckle at her bluntness. I appreciate your assistance nonetheless. This city is overwhelming, to say the least. Raven nodded, her expression turning serious. Yeah, it can be a lot to take in, especially for someone who's not used to it. Listen, I know we just met and all, but if you need a guide or something, I'd be happy to show you around. It's the least I can do after you helped me take out those thugs. Zachary hesitated for a moment, weighing his options. He was a warrior trained to be self-reliant and wary of strangers, but there was something about Raven that intrigued him, a spark of defiance and strength that he couldn't help but admire. And in this strange new world, he could use all the allies he could get. I would be honored to accept your offer, he said at last, inclining his head in a gesture of respect. Lead the way, Raven Blackwood. Raven grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. All right then, Zachary of the Celery, let's go have some fun. As they set off into the neon-lit night, Zachary couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement building in his chest. He was a stranger in a strange land, but with Raven by his side, he felt like anything was possible. Together, they would navigate the dangers and wonders of this cyberpunk metropolis, forging a bond that would change both their lives forever. Little did they know, however, that their meeting was no coincidence. In the shadows of the city, dark forces were at work, plotting and scheming to unleash a terror unlike anything the world had ever seen. And Zachary and Raven were about to find themselves at the center of it all, fighting not just for their own survival but for the fate of the entire human race. The pulsing beat of electronic music filled the air as Zachary and Raven made their way through the crowded streets of the entertainment district. Holographic billboards flickered overhead, advertising everything from the latest cybernetic enhancements to black market weapons. Raven navigated the chaos with ease, her movements fluid and graceful as she wove through the throngs of people. Zachary, on the other hand, felt like a fish out of water. The sheer sensory overload of the city was almost too much to bear, and he found himself constantly on edge, his hand never straying far from his energy pistol. But with Raven by his side, he felt a sense of safety and belonging that he hadn't experienced since leaving his homeworld. As they turned a corner, Raven came to a sudden stop, her eyes widening in surprise. No way, she breathed, a grin spreading across her face. The Neon Lotus is having a special event tonight. We have to check it out. Zachary frowned, confused. The Neon Lotus? What is that? Raven turned to him, her expression incredulous. You've never heard of the Neon Lotus? It's only the hottest club in the city. They say if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Zachary's frown deepened. I am not sure I understand the significance of this establishment. Is it a place of great importance? Raven laughed, shaking her head. You could say that. It's where all the movers and shakers of the city go to let loose, have a good time. And tonight they're having a special event, a showcase of the latest in cybernetic enhancements. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Zachary hesitated, torn between his curiosity and his sense of caution. He was a warrior, not a partygoer, and the idea of mingling with the city's elite made him uneasy. But the excitement in Raven's eyes was infectious, and he found himself nodding in agreement. Very well, he said, straightening his shoulders. Lead the way. As they approached the entrance to the Neon Lotus, Zachary couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The club was a towering structure of glass and steel, its facade pulsing with neon lights in every color of the rainbow. A line of people stretched around the block, all of them dressed in the latest fashions and adorned with glittering cybernetics. Raven strode up to the bouncer, a massive man with a shaved head and a cybernetic arm. Raven Blackwood, she said, her voice confident. +1. The bouncer nodded, stepping aside to let them pass. As they entered the club, Zachary was immediately assaulted by a wall of sound and light. The main dance floor was a sea of writhing bodies, all moving in time to the pulsing beat of the music. Holographic displays flickered overhead, showcasing the latest in cybernetic enhancements, everything from glowing tattoos to full-body augmentations. Raven grabbed Zachary's hand, pulling him toward the bar. "Come on," she shouted over the music. "Let's grab a drink and check out the showcase." As they made their way through the crowd, Zachary couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. There was something about the club that felt off, a darkness lurking beneath the glittering surface. He scanned the room, his warrior instincts on high alert, but he couldn't pinpoint the source of his discomfort. Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd as a figure stepped onto the stage. He was a tall, thin man with pale skin and jet-black hair, his eyes glinting with a cold, calculating intelligence. He wore a sleek black suit adorned with glowing circuitry that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice smooth and charismatic, "welcome to the Neon Lotus. Tonight, we have a very special showcase for you. A glimpse into the future of human evolution." The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, but Zachary felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about the man on stage that set his teeth on edge, a sense of danger that he couldn't shake. Raven, on the other hand, seemed enthralled by the man's words. She leaned forward, her eyes wide with excitement, as he began to unveil the latest in cybernetic enhancements. "Behold," the man said, gesturing to a holographic display, "the next generation of neural implants. With this technology, you will be able to access the entirety of human knowledge with a single thought. You will be able to communicate with others across vast distances, share memories and experiences as if they were your own. You will become more than human. You will become something greater." The crowd erupted into cheers once again, but Zachary felt a growing sense of unease. There was something wrong with this technology, something that went against everything he believed in as a warrior of the Chalar. As the showcase continued, Zachary found himself drawn into a conversation with a group of partygoers. They were all heavily augmented, their bodies adorned with glowing circuitry and sleek metal implants. They spoke of the wonders of the latest cybernetic enhancements, of the power and control they offered. But as Zachary listened, he couldn't help but feel a sense of revulsion. These people were willing to sacrifice their humanity for the sake of power, to give up everything that made them unique and individual. It went against everything he had been taught as a Chalar warrior, everything he believed in. Suddenly, a scream rang out across the dance floor. Zachary whirled around, his hand going to his energy pistol, but he was too late. A group of heavily armed men burst into the club, their faces obscured by high-tech masks. They moved with military precision, cutting down anyone who stood in their way. Raven was on her feet in an instant, her own weapons drawn. "Zachary," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "We have to get out of here." But Zachary was already moving, his warrior instincts taking over. He charged toward the attackers, his energy pistol blazing. The men were heavily augmented, their bodies enhanced with cybernetic implants, but Zachary was faster and stronger. He moved like a blur, his movements fluid and graceful as he cut through their ranks. Raven was right behind him, her own weapons flashing. Together, they fought their way toward the exit, the screams of the dying and the roar of gunfire filling their ears. As they burst out into the street, Zachary felt a sense of relief wash over him. They had made it out alive, but at what cost? The attack on the Neon Lotus was just the beginning, he realized. There was something much larger at play here, a darkness that threatened to consume the entire city, and he and Raven were the only ones who could stop it. The streets of the cyberpunk metropolis were in chaos. Everywhere Zachary looked, there were signs of destruction. Overturned vehicles, shattered windows, and the bodies of the dead and dying. The attack on the Neon Lotus had been just the beginning, he realized. The dark forces that lurked in the shadows of the city had finally made their move. Raven was by his side, her face grim and determined. "We have to find out who's behind this," she said, her voice tight with anger. "And we have to stop them before it's too late." Zachary nodded, his own resolve hardening. He had seen the darkness that lurked in the hearts of men, the corruption that festered in the very foundations of the city, and he knew that he could not stand idly by while innocent people suffered. Together, they set out into the streets, their weapons at the ready. They moved quickly and quietly, avoiding the roving gangs of looters and the patrols of heavily armed security forces. They had a mission, and nothing would stand in their way. As they made their way deeper into the heart of the city, Zachary couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat, every alleyway a potential ambush. But he trusted in his warrior instincts and in the strength of the woman by his side. Suddenly, a figure stepped out of the shadows, blocking their path. It was the man from the Neon Lotus, the one who had unveiled the neural implants. But there was something different about him now, a coldness in his eyes that sent a chill down Zachary's spine. Well, the man said, his voice dripping with malice. If it isn't the alien and his little human pet, I must say, I'm impressed that you made it this far. Raven stepped forward, her weapons raised. Who the hell are you? She demanded, her voice filled with fury. And what do you want with this city? The man laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed off the walls of the alleyway. Who am I? I am the future, my dear. And what I want is simple, to bring about the next stage of human evolution, to create a new world order where the strong rule over the weak. Zachary felt a surge of anger rise up within him. This man was no visionary, no leader of men. He was a tyrant, a monster who sought to impose his will upon the world through force and fear. You are wrong, Zachary said, his voice calm and steady. True strength comes from within, from the courage and compassion that lies in the hearts of all living beings. It is not something that can be imposed from without through violence and oppression. The man's face twisted into a sneer. You are a fool, alien. You know nothing of the true nature of power. But you will learn soon enough. With a flick of his wrist, the man summoned a swarm of heavily armed drones, their sleek metal bodies glinting in the neon light. Zachary and Raven sprang into action, their weapons blazing as they fought off the relentless onslaught. But even as they fought, Zachary could feel a sense of despair creeping over him. The drones were too many, too powerful. They were being driven back, slowly but surely, toward the edge of the alleyway. And then, just when all hope seemed lost, a miracle happened. The sound of engines filled the air, and a squadron of sleek black vehicles came roaring down the street. They were heavily armed, bristling with weapons and armor, and emblazoned with a symbol that Zachary had never seen before. The vehicles screeched to a halt, and a group of heavily armed men leaped out, their weapons at the ready. They wore sleek black armor adorned with glowing circuitry and moved with the precision and grace of trained warriors. At their head was a man, tall and imposing, with short silver hair and piercing blue eyes. He radiated an aura of power and authority, and Zachary knew instinctively that he was the leader of this group. Stand down, he said, his voice calm and commanding. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and you might live to see another day. The man from the Neon Lotus snarled in fury, his face twisting into a mask of rage. You think you can stop me? He roared, his voice filled with madness. I am the future. I am the destiny of the human race. But even as he spoke, the silver-haired man raised his weapon, a sleek black rifle that pulsed with energy. He fired, and the man's head exploded in a shower of blood and circuitry. The drones, suddenly leaderless, began to falter and fall, their programming disrupted by the loss of their master. The warriors in black armor moved in, cutting them down with ruthless efficiency. And then it was over. The alleyway was silent, save for the hum of the warriors' weapons and the soft whir of their armor. Zachary and Raven stood in the center of it all, their bodies aching with exhaustion and their minds reeling with the events of the past few hours. The man with silver hair approached them, his face unreadable. You fought well, he said, his voice tinged with respect. But there is still much work to be done. The darkness that plagues the city runs deep, and it will take more than just 2 warriors to root it out. Zachary nodded, his resolve hardening once more. We will fight, he said, his voice filled with determination. For as long as it takes and with every ounce of strength we possess, this city and its people are worth fighting for. The man smiled, a rare show of emotion on his stoic face. "Then welcome to the resistance," he said, holding out his hand. "Together, we will build a new future, one where the strong protect the weak, and where justice and compassion reign supreme." Zachary took his hand, feeling the strength and power that flowed through him. He knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, filled with danger and sacrifice. But he also knew that he had found his true calling, his purpose in life. And with Raven by his side and the warriors of the resistance at his back, he knew that anything was possible. Together, they would fight for the soul of the city and for the future of the human race.